This is the Page Publishing Book Club. How you doing? I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Hope you were able to enjoy it, even though some states had some restrictions going on because of you know what. Well, we've got some great authors coming up here. Michael A. Newman is a private investigator in Biloxi, Mississippi for over 40 years. And he drew on that experience when he decided to write The Man Trap to illustrate the difficult position men are in today as a result of the Me Too movement, which he believes has contributed to some confusion among men as to how they should proceed after they meet a person they're attracted to. Michael.
The Man Trap was intended for young men, middle-aged men, to understand what they're becoming involved in any type of relationship with women in our modern society. I thought about writing this book for years and years and just never did. The Me Too movement was, I guess you'd say, the straw that broke the camel's back. It got me to the point where I had to say something. It does address the Me Too movement at the end of the book, and talks about some of my opinions about it as an investigator. It is not flattering to women, dear, not at all. You know, as a young man, your father and older uncles and everybody, they give you advice. And of course, younger men seem to just shrug it off. They don't listen to it. I read an article back in July where consensual sex between adults was down 15%. And they blame it entirely on the Me Too movement. Men and women are scared to get together. So in my career, I have never seen anyone come out and give this kind of advice to men. And it's based on all the information that I've gathered, not only as a private investigator, but as, in my personal life. I've dealt with it too. How does a man approach a woman and tell her he thinks she's attractive, would like to go out with her, would like to go to bed with her? They can't because they're immediately vilified. And if someone accuses someone of this, the media, everyone else, jumps on this guy and vilifies him with both feet. And then he has no recourse but to defend himself in a court of law. The problem I have as an investigator is that someone can come and make charges against you or claims against you 10, 20, 30, and 40 years after the fact. There are very few crimes in our country that have no statute of limitations. But it seems to be now that it's the popular concession that when a woman accuses a man of impropriety, whatever it might be, that they can go back as far as they want. And you know, our country was founded on the belief that you are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. I'll tell you right now that if you're a man in this country, and call me a male chauvinist pig, whatever you want to call me, right. But the opposite is true. You're guilty until you can prove yourself innocent, and it's just not right. Do I think that every woman who accuses a man of doing something impropriety, of sexually or battery or whatever, is making something up? No, I do not. And I'll tell you right now that if I had a wife or a daughter and they were involved in something like this and they told me what happened, I'd be behind them 1,000%. But the pendulum has swung the other way. It's affecting people who are willing to get married. It's affecting men and women who want to get together to have sex. And as a man, it's hard for me to understand. Something bad happens to a woman, they can't just run out and tell everybody. I understand that. But please, 20 and 30 years later, having all these memories and coming back and making these accusations, I think that's wrong.
All right, Michael, thank you so much. Alan LaRue owned so many businesses and met so many interesting people, including President Trump, and had so many great stories to tell. A friend finally convinced him to start talking, and the friend started typing. And now we have Living Under a Wobbly Three-Legged Table.
The reason I called that title, I gave it that title, was because my life has been so up and down, sideways, every which way. I actually lived under a wobbly table.
How did you manage meeting members of the mob, Donald Trump, Stephen King? How did you wind up running into these people?
I owned so many businesses. Donald Trump came into one of my businesses in Manhattan on Lexington Avenue. I had an automobile dealership. I think I told you, I did many things. I owned a beauty salon when I was 21. After that, I started buying and selling houses. I bought and sold 75 houses a year for about 6-7 years.
Wow.
After that, I bought the Porsche dealership. And that's how I met Trump. That's where I met Robert De Niro, Woody Allen, Howard Cosell, Peter Boyle. A lot of people walked into that dealership because of the location. Trump, I threw him out onto the sidewalk because he cursed and called one of my sales girls a liar. Not only a liar, he called her an effing liar. I threw him right out onto Lexington Avenue. This was Donald J. Trump, and I threw him out onto Lexington Avenue in the freezing cold. His driver was tied up in traffic, and it was in February. He was trying to come back into the dealership, and we wouldn't let him in.
And he didn't try to sue you?
No, not me. No, he never tried to sue me. Robert De Niro, he wanted to buy this weird Porsche that I had on the showroom floor, and I talked him out of it because, first of all, he couldn't drive standard shift, and I didn't want him to learn how to drive in the city of New York.
Not a great place to learn how to drive stick, that's for sure.
Exactly, yeah. What else? Richard Nixon? Richard Nixon, I met on a flight. This was after he resigned. I was on a flight to Fort Lauderdale, and I always flew first class. And 3 Secret Service men asked me to stand up to see if you have a weapon. I stood up. I turned around. They said, okay, he's all right. And then Richard Nixon walked on the plane, and he sat directly behind me. At that time, there was only 6 sections of first class, and the last 2 were smoking seats.
Right.
This was 1975. And for 2.5 hours, I actually chatted with Richard Nixon on a friendly basis. Never once did I discuss politics. He was a very, very nice man.
So cool.
Very nice man.
Alan, you have so many great stories. Do the people who know you know that you've had, interactions with all of these amazing people?
Yes, everybody that I know, especially now that the book is out, they know that I used to get around. I used to hang out at Studio 54.
Oh boy, those were the days, huh?
Jessica, tell my dog to stop barking.
It's all right.
I think one of my friends has a friend who handles local writers of the newspapers. So that's how it's going to be.
All right, so you're getting some coverage. And now I noticed in your blurb it says that you have MS.
Yeah, multiple sclerosis. Now I'm in a power wheelchair. Have you seen the book?
No, I haven't.
Get it.
I will, Alan.
I'm
Listen,
serious.
I believe you.
Call me back.
All right. It's a deal.
Sounded like his dogs were trying to get in on that interview, didn't it? This is how we roll during COVID. All right. Kurt Bradford is all about Bigfoot, and you are going to find out how obsessed he is with this mammoth ape-like creature in his book entitled Off the Beaten Path, My Search for Sasquatch and Self.
I mean, ever since I was a kid, I can remember reading every single book I could find about Bigfoot. It just resonated with me. So I said, you know what? At some time in my life, when I'm an adult, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to see for myself what's going on in the Pacific Northwest. So 17 years later, after the first Bigfoot book, I got a job out there, Portland, Oregon, and started living the dream.
Did you find what you were looking for?
Yeah, I found what I was looking for. So that really ties into the title of the book, Off the Beaten Path. I can assure you I definitely had to go off the beaten path to find biological evidence of this critter. So I don't, just write about Bigfoot. I write about some of the adventures I had out there in Oregon and the Pacific Northwest. It talks about faith, adventure, discovery. There's a video I did as well that's on YouTube. And if you put in the book title and my name, it shows this wilderness area where I went to this August. And so it's typical of just the awesome natural wonders they have out in the Pacific Northwest that a lot of people have never really been to. The main character in terms of the Bigfoot part of the book is a man by the name of Tony Tamburello. I love his name. He was very instrumental because it's very hard to find someone to go out there and look for Bigfoot with you. So it's very interesting to me because back in the mid 90s, he had seen a couple sets of tracks from some Bigfoots, potentially, I guess, in the Cascade Range in Oregon. And so after I met him at the Bigfoot Society meeting that was out there in Portland, so we started going on adventures together. And I really couldn't have done a lot of the expeditions without him. So I'm very grateful for Tony. He's quite a character.
How long would you stay out in the woods?
I think probably the longest expedition we had was probably like 4 to 5 days, but usually it was on the weekends. And I definitely heard some things that were extremely interesting and would be hard to be faked. I mean, there's always that potential, but I think you look at the Bigfoot phenomenon, there's so many people that have seen Bigfoots or had run-ins with tracks or feeling like they're being watched and everything. I mean, so many people have experienced that. I mean, I would conservatively say that, 10,000, folks have had Bigfoot encounters of one kind or the other. And then you look back in the, in the history of the Northwest, every Native American tribe in the Pacific Northwest, had its own name for Bigfoot, their own stories about it. So I thought that was very interesting because they've lived in that area, for thousands of years. And these legends and these stories go back just, hundreds and hundreds of years. So it's interesting that they all have their own name for it. So it's something spiritual to them. It's also something physical. So it's an interesting to study what the Native Americans think about these things. So there's different avenues online, the Bigfoot groups, to let them know that I wrote the book. It's a unique book. It's not just about Bigfoot. It's about myself as well. I graduated from William Mary in 1995, and the two things I studied were biology. Psychology was my minor. So this really feeds in well to that because, trying to find this unknown hominid named Bigfoot, and at the same time, I'm giving you the psychology behind my adventures out there. So at the very end of the book, the two paths meet, and I won't spoil it, but it was a really good ending to the book. So another individual who was extremely important was John Green. He is an author who passed away, I believe, about 2 years ago, but he was the Bigfoot guru in the world. And I got a chance to meet him in British Columbia before he passed away. So that was really cool. I detail that in the book. I'm looking to get the books in stores at a couple different locations like Books A Million, Barnes and Noble. I've got some book signings that I've got planned. So we're kind of like working from the inside out. So we're looking to get more exposure. So this interview is part of it. But before Christmas, we're definitely ramping up full speed to try and get to as many people as we can and let them know about this.
Good idea, Kurt. Thank you so much. We're going to take a quick break, but we're coming right back. This is the Page Publishing Book Club.
Attention all authors. Page Publishing is looking for authors. Have you written a book and want to get it published? Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, Apple iTunes, and other outlets. They handle all aspects of the publishing process for you: printing, cover art, publicity, copyright, and editing. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. That's 800-204-6099 for your free author submission kit.
You're back on the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini, a youth minister and co-founder of Heaven Sent Life-Changing Center in Stone Mountain, Georgia. Lawrence Patterson decided it was time to share his inspirational nuggets of wisdom.
What really made me write was my love and compassion to help those who are hurting and going through life trials and challenges. I would really speak with my, coworkers and family and friends, and I just heard a lot of pain. And in my prayer time, I just asked him, how can I be of service? And it started out as little text messages. And later on, I just got the idea of, hey, why not try to reach the world? And that's where the publication came in.
These are life-changing devotionals.
Yes. The book really is about how to win in losing situations. And the one that comes to mind it's entitled How to Get Over It. It just says, get over it. And I wrote it with the passing of my mom because I was so hurt. I didn't know how to get over it. I was just focusing, Alice, on the loss. Everything was about my mom's loss, loss, loss. And so God finally revealed to me that it was about her legacy and not her loss. That's what really inspired me to write that one, in terms of how to get through things and not just dwell on the past, and how to actually get through a certain situation. So it was about the legacy that she left everybody, and not the loss. And that's what really healed and got me through that. But it's just changing the perspective, change how you look at things that can help you win. It's like we're testing. It's like, shh, you know how you make the sound, shh, we're testing? And that's the title of it. And the way it begins is, have you ever gone through a real tough time or a painful situation, and it seemed like you were all alone? You prayed and cried out to God for help, only to hear nothing. His presence could not be felt. If you never experienced this, let me tell you, it's a very lonely place to be. You actually feel that all hope is lost because the very one that helped you seems to have left you. But what we sometimes fail to remember about God is that he will never leave or abandon us. God is a good God, good father, and not a deadbeat dad. God is a teacher, and most teachers are quite quiet during test time, but still present. The lessons have already been taught, and now the students are required to apply what they have learned. When we don't hear or feel the presence of God, it doesn't mean that he's not there. It's just that he's allowing us to take our tests and apply what we've learned and heard from his word. Remember, there will be no testimony without a test. With God, you may sometimes feel alone, but it's never possible to actually be alone. God is always with us. So, child of God, stay humble and don't complain during your test time. Be encouraged because you already have the answers to every test, which is Jesus Christ. Put your trust in him and what he's already done for you. God has issued us the passing grades of GOD, G for grace, O for overcomer, and D for deliverance. Keep winning. Love you to life. And that's the end.
Nice. Bet a lot of people feel that way right now.
Oh, yes.
You know,
definitely.
a lot of that going around. Now, you already have a youth ministry, so are you able to stay in touch with, you know, the people that you serve, the people that you talk to?
Yes, actually, we're doing the virtual learning from my facility right now.
So are you able to talk about your book that way?
Yes, we are. I did a Facebook blast out to a lot of, alumnus and people that I know. And I'm meeting with a radio personality such as yourself out of Atlanta, Georgia. And I'm also going to be meeting with a lot of the local churches. And also, I'm going to have my book placed in the local libraries as well.
All great ideas, Lawrence. Good luck to you. Thank you. William B. Braley's grandmother saved every story and poem he wrote from the time he was 12 years old. And when she died, William was inspired to write Hisstenographer.
The reason it is titled Hisstenographer is I felt like that God and the Holy Spirit would give me messages, dreams, visions of things that are coming, things that have already happened, some poetry, just a lot of things that God was dealing with me about to share with people around me. And I don't feel like I wrote any of it. I feel like I'm just the messenger, just his stenographer. That's where the title came from. The very first story in the book is called Stone Stew. And it is a story that maybe I had heard early on in years. And over the years, I had heard different variations of it. And woke up one morning with my own sort of version of it about how people in need, people not knowing where their next meal was going to come from, had given up. They were just waiting to die. And a stranger came to town and pulled them together by putting a pot in the middle of the community and filling it full of water and putting a small stone in the middle and then looking for whoever and whatever they had to spare to make a stew that would feed the whole community. And it pulled the people together and they regained their hope and their vision, and thus the story, The Stone Stew.
Nice. So lots of inspirational stories in this book.
Yes, ma'am. We have very few bookstores anymore. Most of the local bookstores or the small mom and pop bookstores are gone. So what we do with the pandemic and all of the fear that's going on, people are afraid to buy a book because they're afraid somebody else has touched that book and got a germ on it. So we take our books, we order sealed clear plastic bags, and we put each book in a bag, and then we order acrylic countertop book racks, and we put them in the mom and pop's grocery stores, convenience stores, and I carry books wherever I go. In this dump truck, I have a half a dozen of each of the books, but I didn't like the book. I struggled with writing this book. There's 103 pages, and it didn't fit in any format of any book that I used to like to read. I was an avid Louis L'Amour fan. I read everything that Louis L'Amour's ever written, I guess, and my book didn't have a story or a plot, and it was bits and pieces. And I argued with God. I said, God, this is not a good book. It's that nobody's going to read this. And the Holy Spirit kept telling me, it's my book. It's not yours. You do the book. I'll do the rest. And when the first books came, from the very first book I handed out, people have been ministered to, have been blessed, have been inspired. And so on the back of the book, the Holy Spirit told me what to put on the back of the book before it was ever written.
What's it say?
You can read this book for inspiration, for curiosity, for entertainment, or whatever. It is a fiction book. However, it is my belief and my prayer that anyone that takes the book and reads it from cover to cover will have one page, one verse, one paragraph, or one sentence that will affect and change your perception of being a Christian and how you see yourself as a Christ follower. So for whatever reason, read the book.
Okay, Bill. Thank you. Mike Keyes got an idea for a character based on his grandfather during World War I, and then he decided to weave in some history from his hometown in Western New York, and he came up with a story entitled The Juvenile Detective.
It's about a kid, just a regular all-American kid set in 1944, where he's kind of been a little bit of a snoop, and then he kind of gets himself in a little more trouble than he thought he would have, getting a little too deep into something going on. A spy infiltrates the area, and they're trying to sabotage a place in Niagara Falls that would, hopefully stop the war effort. And in order to do that, the kid detective actually figures out more of what's going on than the police do. And I don't know if you could say that it's not possible, but I think there are some things that maybe some people are able to see in a situation than others, but there's a big hunt for this person, and the kid, only being not even old enough to drive, he drives out there and tries to stop what's going on. So he's it's almost like kind of a dream that kids might have had back in the day where they could do something that an adult would normally do, but he builds up enough courage and enough stamina and a little sarcasm when he faces the infiltrator. Most of the work I put into the story itself, too, was a lot of the research I did about what my hometown was like back then, and a lot of things that a lot of other people weren't even aware of. So I thought, make it like a fictional story, but with factual history. And that's what I'm doing with another story that I'm writing, too. But it's a little more kind of a sci-fi kind of story, but I try not to go overboard.
Okay, so The Juvenile Detective will not be a series.
It's the beginning of a series of other stories, and I'm thinking of doing a bunch of short stories after this, between The Juvenile Detective and the new one that I'm writing right now would be possibly where it would end.
Nice.
I just got a box full of flyers, and I'm in the process now of distributing it, and I'm trying to get a hold of the local news networks. I've gone to coffee shops, bookstores. I even went to Barnes & Noble, which they didn't even know about because I guess it's mostly just to buy online. So I got friends that I'm dropping flyers off so they can distribute them. I was thinking about, I've even gone to a few police stations and dropped a few off, knowing people in the police departments that might be interested as well.
Not a bad idea, Mike. Good luck. Douglas Opalski is a painter and a veteran, and when he looks back on his life, he says, It only hurts when I laugh.
Trial and error, I suspect. I've been border illiterate through university and a late bloomer, sort of like a toad lily. Now words flow like paint on a canvas. If you can imagine Huckleberry Finn smiling and leading you with smoke signals and an iPad past the atomic 40s, which we lived through, and those witch hunt 50s, the chaotic 60s, and the trickle-down 70s, and then accommodating 90s, we are now through terrorists, flag-waving days, and a promise of a better era. And ain't that grand? It's a smorgasbord of misadventure and fond memories, woven together with a lot of fun and misadventure.
So it's a bunch of short stories.
That's a good way to put it. Let me think about the best one that I could give you. Alice. Most of the travel that we've done has been to Ireland, and so a lot of the fun that we've had occurred in Dublin and in the south of Ireland. And a lot of that has centered around relatives who have been, I guess you could say them, characters of their own sort. And Marcus Walsh was one of them, and he played a baron. And that's sort of like a tambourine, and he did it with a sheep's bone. And he played it in a barn. And so we would go into this barn, and he would start hammering away at the tambourine. When he did that, people would jump up, brews on the table would spill, and then the dancing would go on until a wobble floor gave way. And this went on for hours, and it was just great fun.
Who's we?
My wife and I and our 3 sons.
So you've got some stories about that in there, too. So these are stories just from various times in your life.
Yeah.
Does one stand out in particular? I mean, that one was pretty good.
Oh, gosh, Alice, I think when I first met Helene, that was a beautiful moment in my life, and it changed the entire direction which I was going. We dated for about 9 months and then decided this was for us. We needed each other. We married, and we started a life on a shoestring. And I think we've been very lucky and fortunate since that time. We've been blessed. I hope that the experiences that we've had are things they can relate to and smile about. So there's plenty of which you can wade through and find something in there that you would like. And that's been about the last week or so. I've been sending flyers out to centers of influence that might like it. We'll see if they pick up on it. I hope so. Have you written anything, Alice?
No, not really. Nope, I just interview authors. And
Well, I think you get a lot of ideas from that, and I think you probably have a book deep down inside of you somewhere.
Who doesn't? Who doesn't, Doug?
That's true. That's exactly right. It's your life story, and it's only lived by you and nobody else.
That's right.
It needs to be shared. No question about it.
Oh, well, we will see about that, Douglas. For now, we got to go. Thanks for joining us on the Page Publishing Book Club. Tell your friends and family to download the podcast at 710WOR.com. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. I'll see you next time.